Welcome to today's Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview practitioners of corporate venturing. Today, I am very glad to have Rosario Cannata, principal at EDP Ventures. Rosario, thank you for being with us today. Would you mind maybe spending 5 minutes to share about your journey into corporate venturing?
Of course, thank you. Hi, Nicolas. Thank you for the invitation. As said, I'm Rosario Cannata. I'm a principal of EDP Ventures. EDP Ventures is the corporate venture capital of EDP, which is a big multinational energy company. So I'm Italian. I've been working, in the US, then moved to Brazil, where I've been living for the last 12 years. And, I studied at Bocconi, I studied economy. And then I always work in project finance and M&A. And, I've always been involved in transactional project finance, big transaction M&A, always in oil and gas and energy in the US and Latin America. And then, once in 2015, there was a very bad financial crisis in Brazil. And, I saw that our big corporation, they were having troubles, raising capital, while startups, very famous startups in Brazil, started to become unicorns. So I didn't know anything about startups. I was in M&A, big transactions, but the scene, I started, with a couple of friends and partners. I started to talk to entrepreneurs, to know more about their paths. And I understand, and in that case, I made an investment in a startup. It was a business angel investment, my first ever investment. It was with my money. So I started to, and this gave me the opportunity to know a lot about the startups world, I met a lot of venture capitalists, in Brazil and Latin America and US. And in that case, I decided that I wanted to work in venture capital more than M&A. And the reason was, M&A, it was great. It was great school. It was very interesting to be involved in so many transactions. But, M&A team, after the transaction is done, is closed, usually is not involved in the post-closing. Is not involved in the governance of the startup, of the company, of course. While in venture capital is smaller transactions, but as the investors are always involved, in the governance of the company, they can really add value. So I understood that I could help much more startups, than big company. So I decided that was my path. So venture capital. In that case, at that time, in 2017, I got hired at EDP, and first I was part of the M&A team. Okay, but then I started having a lot of conversation with the EDP Ventures team in Portugal, and then I had the opportunity to be responsible of the setup of the investment vehicles of EDP Ventures in Brazil. So together with the innovation team, together with the venture capital team in Portugal, we set up a local vehicle. We also had to, set up a new investment thesis. We tried to tropicalize, to see the geography, to see the Brazilian ecosystem, and to understand where to invest and which startups, create a brand, create an ecosystem that EDP didn't have. And in that case, I fell in love with the corporate venture capital because I saw how much value can add a corporation to the startup invested. So that was 5 years ago. So I've been working at EDP Ventures Brazil for the last 5 years. I've invested in 8 startups, and then right now, actually, since next month, I'm going to be joining our global team in Lisbon, and I'm going to be responsible also for global investment, mostly Europe and United States.
Very nice. Congratulations on the move.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's no looking back in terms of your choice to go into corporate venturing.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's really what I understand, that it's something. It's part of my purpose. I'm today when I see a startup, and when I look back and I see a startup where we invested maybe $500,000, and it was like 5, 6 people, and now you see 20, 30, 40 people. I see that we created value, and when I see that startup that is working a lot with EDP Group, I can see that it's something that we made the difference. So for me, it's very important.
It's very rewarding. So let me
Yeah, of
double
course.
click first on your education. How much of, I mean, you're from the finance, you studied economics. How much of that is shaping how you look at your role, and how much is it not shaping your role?
Yeah, of course. When you study finance, and I think the numbers, they are the base of all our transactions. So the study is very important when you work in M&A. You need to know what is a cash flow. You need to see a balance sheet and financials, analyze financials. So that give you the opportunity to understand better the business. Okay. However, when you look at startups, at very early stage startups, sometimes you don't have financials, you don't have very detailed cash flows, um, but but it's always important to support the startups, to have a good, to build up a cash flow, to project the cash flow, to know how much they are spending. Because I see a lot of investors that they just invest in PowerPoint, which is a different kind of investment. But for me, it's very important for us, investor and corporate investor, to know that startup can grow and can control the expenses and can project the revenues. It's very difficult. Okay, we are not going to work and to evaluate a very early stage startups with a DCF
Yeah, yeah.
method. Sometimes we use multiples, most of the time. However, we are now, starting to look at bigger companies, and DCF and cash flow projection. They're going to be much more important in the future.
And that touched probably a lot more about your background in M&A and bigger transactions. When the company are more mature, you can do the DCF methodology. But when it's early stage, so maybe you can share with us, how early are you investing?
Yes, of course. We are investing. We have been investing in very early stage startups. So almost we don't do PowerPoint financing. However, we have invested. Like we have an investment of $100,000, for example, in Brazil. So we invest in startup that we with very few clients that we're starting to. They just finished the proof of concept. However, in that case, for example, we have a case where we invested in a startup that works in electric mobility. For example, it was a very early stage investment, but we invested in them because we understood that they could, provide a very available technology also to EDP. So we invested to build up, to build to develop the technology, and then EDP together with EDP, and then EDP could use this technology, okay, not for free, of course, so paying a market price, and also they could use as a white label to build and to use with other companies. So in that case, it was a very early stage investment. It happened that they grow a lot. Now they are almost they are bigger now in Brazil, and they are also working with other competitors, and they are also raised capital with other. They just recently raised capital with other energy companies. So we have invested $100,000. Okay, we have also invested between $1 and $2 million. Right now, we are trying to move up, and invest more. So, but this is very, very, very recent. So we decided to, to do not just seed capital and Series A, but also Series B and maybe some Series C. So we understand that is very important now that you have a lot of experience in the portfolio management, to start investing more with bigger company that can make more impact within our organization.
Very nice. And when we talk about early stage, I feel like in your story, the fact you started touching angel investment kind of woke up your senses to what you were really interested in. And so the M&A track was one thing that made sense, but the angel is what woke you up in a way. Can you share if this is something you would recommend people who are thinking about joining a corporate VC or even a financial VC to start doing angel investment if they can afford it?
Yes, of course. I think that a professional that works, executive that works in corporate venture capital, they are very different. We have engineers, we have people in finance, we have bankers. So the background is very diverse. Okay, but in my opinion, we have the CVC professional as a very usually is an hybrid, a mix between M&A skills and innovation skills. Okay, so you need to know and maybe participate of big and complex transaction. Okay, because you're going to negotiate equity investment and safe and convertible note, which is very important to know the details. And in the other hand, you need to have a very open mind, maybe people skills that innovation guys usually have, okay? Because you need to know the startups to help them, build up relationship inside the organization, okay? So those are the profiles that I think are very important for a CVC professional. Of course, if you have the opportunity to do some angel investment, it's something that today is much more is easier than the past, because you have more information, and so people, they can study on it, they can join other business angels group, okay, maybe get in bigger deals. However, it's much difficult to get in the deals, because startups as of today, they can choose their investors. So you need to invest in startups where you really can add value. In the past, you have money, you invest in a food tech, you invest in a fintech. Everybody was asking for money, okay? But as of today, if a food tech or maybe a fintech asks me for money, usually it could be very difficult for me to invest in a fintech. I know fintechs, but I don't know just as much as I know energy techs, of course.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And one thing that you talked about was the governance of startups and adding value that way. How do you see the governance between a seed investment, Series A, Series B? Do you see some granularity about how you can add value?
Yeah, of course. In our experience, I can see that very early stage startups, they need less governance. Okay, so you need to leave them work. Do this. You cannot freeze all the process. So you need a very light presence in the company in terms of official governance, okay, for approval, etc. However, early stage startups need the help, to get bigger, need the help to be more professional, need the help to create value. So in that case, you don't have maybe a very heavy and hard governance. However, you have frequent weekly calls with the entrepreneur to help the entrepreneur to get a client, to prepare maybe an investment deck, to prepare a commercial deck. So it's very important for the early stage startups to be present. However, not too heavy with the official governance. In case of investment like Series B, Series C, you're a startup that they need governance. You need to have the control. The entrepreneurs, they need to know that investors are close. Okay, they need to know that you need to audit the financials. You need to check, salaries, etc. So it's very important to be closer, from an official, a formal point of view in more mature startups.
And maybe this is an open question, but do you think financial VCs or corporate VCs are better equipped to help on the governance side, and why?
Okay, I think venture capital and corporate venture capital, they are the best option for investment. But when they are together, I think venture capitalists, they also add value, the value creation, maybe the governance. They are very experienced in founder friendly investment. Okay, sometimes the corporation are not so founder friendly. Okay, EDP try always to be founder friendly. I understand when we co-invest with a financial investors, it's more guaranteed that we can have a more founder friendly deal.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
so in terms of governance, they add value as a financial investors. In terms of creating value and impact, so in that case, corporate venture capital, they like everybody talk about smart money. I think that corporate venture capital bring on the table the real smart money. If it's a CVC that can really work, with the business unit and within the organization, because of course we can always, help the startup with proof of concept, with pilots, help the startup with real contract and big revenues. So and sometimes we can bring our engineers, our expert on the table to develop a technology. So I think that the CVC bring the strategic value, which is very important for the startup.
Yeah, I think that's a golden nugget. I think the combination of financial VCs and corporate VCs, something magical can happen.
Yeah, of course, I totally agree. We have most of our investments, are with financial investors. We usually invest. It's very rare. We have invested alone, okay, but usually we co-invest with other financial investors.
Actually, it leads to a question, and I've seen this with people who have done M&A before, where they feel, especially with a finance background, where they feel more comfortable to lead and price around. What's your approach to that?
I think we have done both approach. Okay, so we have usually we have more we have followed. Okay, but in some case we also led some round. Okay, I think it depends on the size of the ticket, of course, the round, and also how much how close is the startups to our core business. Sometimes when it's very strategic investment, so we are more comfortable leading the investment. Okay, so
Very
also
nice.
sometimes when it's very far away, for example, if we invest in a fintech that works with the energy company, for example, if we would invest in something like that, we will definitely follow a more and financial investor which that works already with fintechs. Okay, but if you invest in an energy tech, in a market that we already know a lot, and we see a lot of opportunities within EDP and other energy company, that we might be, it would be better to lead also.
Yeah, and actually I want to double click on this. Part of you being a corporate VC of EDP means that you have this access to experts, world experts. How much of that can you rely on making your investments and nearly having an unfair advantage because you have so much insight into a space where it was going to grow?
Yeah, of course, for us, we have this really good opportunity to use our internal experts. We call it them, the innovation domain managers. So there are people that they know the technology that we invest like renewable energy storage, and all our investment verticals, innovation domain. So for us, it's very important to engage those experts. So those experts, together with the business units, the managers and the directors of the business unit, are the real key factors of a successful corporate venture capital. Okay, so we bring to the table those experts. They need to see that startups is not competing with some internal solution that is being developed, okay, but is complementary to our technology, and we can together build something better and stronger. Okay, same things applies with the business unit manager or directors, that sometimes they don't have time to look at innovation, to analyze startups, because they are always focused on the business. Okay, so it's very important for them, to engage, to be engaged, to be part. They need to feel part of the process of analyze and the investment, and sometimes also of the post investment. So in some cases, we've been also in the past, we also involved, we also appointed some board members. They were not from the ventures team. In some cases, we had board members from the business unit. So because those people, they are the people that at the end they write the check. Okay, they are going to work with the startups and maybe have, they're going to bring revenues, and they're going to help with the technology. So those guys, we need to engage them, and they need to be part of the investment process too.
Very nice. And so maybe about this point about some of your managers from the BUs become board members. Are they full board members or as a observer?
Yeah, we had in one case we had a full board member. Okay, it was in one startup, for example, in Brazil, and in most of the case we can have as a board observer.
Okay, and how do you make that choice between the two? Because clearly there is differences between the two choices.
Yeah, of course. I think it depends on the negotiation with the entrepreneurs.
Okay.
In a couple of cases, the founders, they told us, we really would like, these guys, the relation was so good with the business unit, and they asked us, we would like that guy, that manager, to be closer to us.
Nice.
So in that case, and then we need to negotiate also with other investors. We need to understand also within our governance if that manager or director can be a board member or not. Okay, so there is a couple of variables and also approvals needed.
Yeah.
But in that case, we can have it as a board member or board observer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I'm sure there is conflict of interest checks and all of that.
Yeah,
one thing you mentioned, which I think is underlined in your investment thesis, is this complementary to EDP. Can you walk us through how you build your investment thesis, and maybe start it generic so that the audience can take some golden nuggets from you about how to build an investment thesis?
Yeah, of course. To build an investment thesis, you need to know which are the goals of the organization. So the venture team is not looking at that as other things, as startups that, as when you need to bring to the table strategic impact. Okay, so you need the investment team really need to work close with the business unit, with all the organization, to build an investment strategy that can help the organization reach the long-term goals. Exactly. For example, EDP has goals, which are public, 2025, 2030, which is our goal in terms, for example, on net zero emissions. Okay, we want to have 100% of renewable energy. We want to, invest more in electric mobility, etc. So we know those long-term goals of the organization. So we know that EDP alone cannot do it, cannot make it. It's very challenging goals. So EDP needs to do it with the innovation team, with the startup engagement program, with partnership, and also with venture investment. So venture investment is is an instrument, of the organization, of the innovation ecosystem within the organization, to reach long-term goals. So once you have the long-term goals, you need to see, okay, we want to be 100% renewables. How can we do that? Okay, we need to invest in startups that can help to improve our efficiency in renewable energy, that can maybe find new way to produce energy. We need to invest in green hydrogen. We need to invest in technology that make it the green hydrogen cheaper. So it's you start from the top, and you start detailing that which are the verticals that you need to invest, to reach that goal. And of course, sometimes things can change. You can discover a new technology. You can test that technology is not working. The strategy of the group can change. It can happen. Not just the EDP. In the organization can change the governance, the CEO, etc. So you need the venture team also need to be prepared to change and adapt the investment thesis, to serve the organization.
Yeah, I really like the way you say serve the organization, and you start from the goals of the organization and then decide what are your investment thesis across verticals. Now, once you have that investment thesis, let's say in hydrogen, how do you then go into building that investment thesis so that when you meet a startup that meets it, you know it right away, and when some don't, you know it right away?
I think it's depends on the knowledge that the investment team has on the on that technology. So for this reason, we need to study and to be very close to the innovation domain managers. We need to really know. Usually we used to do a lot of internal roadshow. So we need to know, like the hydrogen team or the renewable energy team, we need to know what they're looking for, which kind of technology they are looking for, which kind of startup can really be helpful in our business. So, and sometimes, we cannot know all the scenarios. So we meet startup. Sometimes we need in 5 seconds that this is the startup, this is interesting, it fit our thesis because it's in this vertical, is a Series A, Series B, Series C. Okay, but then we really need a lot of times we need to check with our expert, because they're going to tell us, okay, it's interesting from an investment point of view. What about from a business strategic point of view? So for this reason, the relationship with the innovation team, with the business unit, with the innovation domain managers is very important. So for this reason that the CVC, we have corporate and organization where the CVC are totally separated, from the organization. That is, you have pros and cons of that strategy, but you always need to have, close relationship with experts, with the business unit.
Well, you could argue if you don't have it, you're not going to bring value to the startup later on. After
you are a financial investor. If you want to be a financial investor, then okay, then you are a financial investor. And there is corporations, and we know some of them, they have a CVC, but they have a 100% financial strategy. It's not our case. In our case, we are a strategic corporate venture capital. So financial return is important. So we need to add value, also financial value to our partner companies, to our organization. However, strategic impact is more important. Strategic impact is fundamental for our strategy, for our long-term sustainability.
Very nice. Let's double click or maybe triple click on this strategic value. And actually, you term it as strategic impact. How do you measure impact?
Yeah, that's the $1 million, maybe $1 billion question.
Yeah, maybe 1 billion.
yeah, of course. We have KPIs, and I think all the companies, they start with a couple of KPIs, then they start detailing more. They need to change the KPI. I think that of course we have to see strategic impact. You need to see the relationship between the startup and the organization, the company. Okay, so how we measure those relationships, if they are good or not good, how you measure the CDC is investing in good startups or not. Okay, so from our point of view, we usually see how many contract and relationships are between our portfolio and the business unit. Okay, if you have 20 startups in your portfolio and you have just one contract, then you are really not doing a good job. Okay, but if a big percentage of your portfolio already work with your organization, then is a good KPI. Another one, for example, is the amount of the contract. Okay, so if you have 10 startups in your portfolio and you have $5,000 of contract or pilot with 5 of them, so what are you doing? So you're investing in PowerPoint, you're investing very early stage, okay, but you are not yet generating impact, okay, in the organization and in the startup. But in the other side, if you have big contract with the startup that you invest in, so you have contract above 100,000, 200,000, million of dollars, then you can see that we have invested in startups that can really, can really impact your organization. So I think the amount of the contract, it's not always like this. Okay, so some startups, when we invest in Horizon 3, so they are not going to have revenues for now. Okay, but you need always to balance in a portfolio management strategy. You need to balance to see that you are bringing value to the startups. So we also have other KPIs that can measure not only the impact as a strategic impact, but also, for example, the social impact that you can do. I think all the investors right now need to do sustainable investing. So need to understand that the investment also impact society, impact the environment. So as an energy tech, renewable energy, we always do investment, and we can always measure the environmental impact, okay, which is very important. But what about the social impact? Yep. So for us, it's important to see, for example, how many women, are in our startups, are working in our startup, how many founders are women, how much, the diversity in general. So we always push our startups, to make choice, to look at diversity, for example. That is something very important also for us to measure our impact, social impact, of course.
Yeah, I'll talk about sustainability, but I do like the proxy of the contract size to the strategic impact. Clearly, if it's a massive contract, there is value being created and being captured. So I think that's a good golden nugget to track not just the number of contracts, but their relative size.
Yeah, of course.
On the sustainability aspect, how do you use that maybe as an investment criteria, or is it once you've invested, you're being more diligent about it?
I think sustainability now is always need to be part also of our due diligence, need to be part of our investment decision. So to see if that startups, in terms of compliance and governance, in terms of the environmental impact, social impact, now, it's something that we are starting, to include in our investment decision. Investment is something that we always been analyzing, so it's very important. What we are now doing is also try to measure that impact, in our portfolio management. Okay, so that is very important for us. So it's something that all investors right now should do it. And for us, it's a little bit easier, as I said, because we invest in energy techs, in climate tech. So it's part of our mission to have a positive environmental impact.
And I think it goes back to your investment thesis is built on top of these big goals of EDP, which includes sustainability publicly. So that makes sense. Can you maybe share a little bit about how you are organized in terms of, clearly you have an investment team, but you must have also team members who are making sure this synergies and the strategic value is captured between your portfolio and EDP. How does that work in your team, and how do you make sure you maximize that value?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, in the past, investment teams, we were doing like everything, since the scouting of the startups, then the analyzing of the investment analysis, then the post investment, so the portfolio management, and then also the business development of the startups and the organization. Recently, we started not only in Brazil but also in Portugal. Our innovation team changed, and the goal is to create also those domain managers and also the business developers. There are people that work, that they know the organization, they know the business unit, they are the point of contact of the business unit, okay, and they know what the business unit are looking for, and then they always help us propose the startups of our portfolio, for example. Okay, so they help us not only in the scouting of new startups, but also in creating value to our portfolio. So our guys, for example, the innovation team in Brazil, they have very good relationship with for example, the distribution team in Brazil. So they know that they are looking at a kind of technology, some kind of technology. So they always try to propose the startups that are in our portfolio that can help them. Okay, and then also scouting those startups in the market. So I think the innovation team and those business development professional, they are very important to help the CVC, to create impact, to create value.
Very nice. And so maybe here there's something worth understanding is, how do you make sure that these innovation domain experts have incentive to help the CVCs and to help the startups? Because it's not always easy when it's outside the CVC to get the right support. And here I can see it's working. So maybe you can share what the tips you would want to share with the audience.
Yeah, of course. I think the incentives is when you have good relationship and communication is very important. However, the best incentives is when you put that in the goals of the team. So if you put in the goals, okay, that team they're going to have to bring I don't know, $1 million of revenues to the startup or our portfolio. Then that's the biggest. The best incentives. So that is, we are piloting this. We are always change. It's so important that we always every year we try to look back and see, okay, that worked. Okay, did the innovation team help us or not? Did the venture team was the venture team able to bring more contract than the innovation team or what? So all the organization need to look, the KPI and the goals, and the strategic objectives, short, medium, and long term, and look back and maybe also change them, because some things they can work in an organization, they can be different in the other one. So it's always there is always this need, to check and maybe change.
Very nice. Now let's go higher level up, and let's assume there is a company that doesn't have a CVC today, but they have all the other, I like the term you use, instrument. They have all the other instrument of corporate innovation, but not a CVC. What would be your argument why they should have a CVC?
Yeah, okay. For me, CVC is the latest, the last instrument of the innovation ecosystem for a company. Okay, so you cannot have a CVC if you don't have an innovation team, if the organization never worked with startups, if you never had a startup engagement program. So you need to have the innovation culture mature to have a CVC. Okay, because you cannot invest in a startup and that startup then it's gonna be cannot work with the organization. Everybody is like it's very difficult to have a contract, and compliance block it, and then the legal block it. So it's very important to have a very mature innovation culture. Okay, and then you can have and structure a CVC. Okay, because and why I would structure a CVC? That's why we did it. I understand that the instrument of innovation, sometimes, for example, acceleration program, okay, that is very important for the business unit and the organization to know new technologies, okay, to pilot a new technology, to do some proof of concept, and it's very important. But sometimes, so it's very important for the organization. However, sometimes, when you have the acceleration program, the startup is engaged, the business unit is engaged, the innovation team is engaged. Then the acceleration program finish, and the innovation team has thousands of things to do, and the business unit has other priorities, and the startup sometimes, is left alone, trying to for several months, to negotiate a contract. So when you have a CC and you invest in that startup, you create a closer relationship. So that closer relationship, because it's not a temporary relationship. It's a wedding. Okay, so you need to always to be close to the startups, and when you are a part of the startup, this help you with the business unit, to have stronger arguments and to have their attention, okay, to be more patient and to invest time and money to make it happen, okay, to make it happen, to have a relationship with the startups. So sometimes when you have this, it's easier for us as investment team to push the startup to have a very close relationship, to build a closer relationship with the business unit, which is fundamental.
Very nice. And so what I'm taking away is it's a very important instrument once you have the other instruments, and they have to play together a beautiful music.
Yes.
Okay, very nice. Rosario, I want to take advantage of your experience of 12 years in Brazil to maybe deep dive a little bit about what's so special about Brazil. Everyone knows it's a very entrepreneurial country, very big market, but can you share a bit more depth into what makes Brazil so important for VCs and CVCs?
Yes, of course. Brazil is, as everybody knows, is a country with more than 200 million people. Okay, so it's a huge market, and average, people they are young. So if you compare to Europe, for example, so they are very open to technology and to use the credit card and to use internet to buy stuff. So all the startups that work in the B2C market, they can, if they are good, they can scale very fast in Brazil. Okay, so that is very important. It's a very good thing about the Brazilian ecosystem. Also, in the last is an ecosystem which is very new. So we, as I mentioned earlier, the ecosystem was starting, to be more famous and with a lot of investment in 2015. Before 2015, there wasn't so many corporate venture capital or venture capitals or business angels. So in the last 7 years, the ecosystem has been very developing very fast. So we have every year like more investment from Brazilian venture capitalists and also American venture capitalists and European venture capitalists. So it's something that because there is a lot of things to do. Okay, Brazil is developing countries which has a very, for example, is very. There is a lot of talent developing great technology, software technology in fintechs, for example. So we have seen a couple of unicorns as fintechs and more maybe. So is an ecosystem which is growing a lot. And in terms of corporate venture capital, in the last 3 years, for example, I've been a national coordinator of the CVC committee of EDP, which is one of the biggest association of venture capital in Latin America. And we started this during the pandemic in December 2020. Okay, and we had like 10 companies. Okay, that were trying to build to structure a CVC. And now I left last month the committee as I'm moving to Portugal, and we have more than 80 companies in the committee. So 80 companies, which are multinational companies, local companies, that they have a corporate venture capital, they are starting to structure a corporate venture capital. So everybody, all those companies understood that they need that instrument, to help them reach their goals. And so they are starting doing this. Some company, they have a CVC outside of Brazil, and they are starting to have CVC local team or local vehicle to invest in Brazilian startups. So
very nice.
I
want to double click on this group you created, and now it's 80 of them. Any best practice? Well, first of why you did it, but then the best practice into building it into something impactful. And I'm asking because we should be doing the same in India. So I want to hear your tip.
Yeah, of course. I think that corporate venture capital, why we did this? Because we need to spread the best practice. Okay. Sometimes corporate venture capital, they are like, they suffer prejudice. Okay, like I don't want to raise capital with a corporate. They're gonna kill me 1 year. So it's in the past maybe it was like this, but we need to our all of the profession that they have been working corporate venture capital for some time need to spread best practice to convince the company to build a founder-friendly corporate venture capital. That is very important, because if all the corporate in Latin America and in Europe start following the best international best practice of corporate venture capital, then we will be the first option for a startup to raise capital. Today, CVC are not the first option. Okay, most of the time, the first option are the best venture capitalists in the US, man. Okay, but to build, if you build a relationship, if we build an ecosystem of CVC that follow the best practice, then we might be the first option. Although also we might be always, with the good reputation, we will always be invited in the best deals. I want to confess to you, when 5 years ago we started EDP Ventures in Brazil, a couple of venture capitalists told me we do not co-invest with corporate. So I was sitting at a table. They told me that. So that changed. That changed because EDP was working very good in Latin America. Also, venture capital, they started meeting a lot of very, very serious corporate venture capital, so that they are not doing that for marketing purposes, because it's a trend. Okay, but so now I receive WhatsApp and calls from the best venture capitalists that they want EDP on board. They call EDP because they understand they can add value.
Exactly.
Not all of them.
It's all about adding value.
Yeah. It's all about adding value. So the founders understand that we are good. We can add value and cause impact. and also the financial investors. So this is about reputation. So as you mentioned, we should be doing this in India, of course, because as of today, we invested. I met a lot of CVC in that committee, and now we have invested in startups. And we exchange pipeline. We exchange not only best practice but also pipeline. Okay, we have also we also exchange business development opportunities. So if I invest in a startup, I have always 80 big companies that they can introduce the startup that I invested. Okay, to of course to make some to have contract with those companies. So it's very important to build serious and a collaborative ecosystem within the corporate venture capital.
Very nice. And of course, it's easier when it's only 10 members. You can meet over dinner or every so often, but when it becomes 80, that starts to become quite the enterprise. How do you keep it alive? How do you keep it to a point where you raise the bar for everyone versus it's different team members everywhere?
Yeah, for now, the pandemic helped us because we are doing like every 2 months, and it's always conference call. So everybody joining. So we don't need to make a reservation in a place, in a restaurant, something like that. We are doing this on internet. Sometimes we need to meet. I think it's important, but we can do recurrent calls, and always the challenge has been to bring always value to the table. To like, for example, new information. Bring new companies that can show why they created a corporate venture capital. Also, we brought lawyers from United States to discuss the structure. We also brought consulting company that they talked about CVC compensation, for example, which is an issue in most of the CVC. It's something that is everybody's trying to change it, but mostly most of the people they cannot change. So we always try to bring new information and quality lessons for everybody.
Very nice. So from all your time in EDP Ventures, what is your biggest learning, maybe your best practice that you would want to share with the audience?
I think that for us, my biggest learning is, as I mentioned, is I tried as a CVC professional, and also my team, I always tried to build great relationship with the business unit. Okay, understand if CVC professional, they need to have people skills, and they need to have to be close to the business unit, because sometimes a lot of people say the innovation happens in the coffee, and that's true. I've been working for EDP for the last 5 years, and having good relationship with directors and managers of the business unit helped me and helped the startups I invested in, because we always found a way to make things happen. So I think relationship with business unit and managing director of business unit, be involved in the investment process, in the analysis. It's critical for a successful corporate venture capital.
Very nice. We're getting to the top of the hour, so I want to ask for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this interview, what do you want to invest next? And I'm talking the next 12 months to maybe 24 months. What are you excited about?
And of course, we are looking at a lot of opportunities in climate tech. Something that is very interesting for now is everything related to carbon capture, for example, or the issuing of carbon credits, preserving the Amazon, for example. It's something that a lot of opportunity that we are analyzing. So that is something that we are studying, and we are aiming to invest.
Very nice. And maybe my last question is, what is a practice you've seen from other CVCs which looks like a good practice, but in effect is not a good practice and actually hurts potentially their reputation? Like a kind of a warning to other people to saying, this looks good, but maybe not.
Yeah, sometimes it's when you try to do when you want to invest as a venture capitalist, and then you start including some clauses, and it becomes an M&A. So it needs to be always governance. The venture capital teams, they always need to balance. There need to be a balance of power. So sometimes in terms of governance is not an M&A. However, the CVC tried to put some exclusivity clause, or maybe some IP clauses. So it's very important to have founder-friendly deals. And sometimes CVC, they say, okay, if you include this clause, it's almost the same, but it's not. Okay, so it's always very important to be close to the startup and have founder-friendly deals.
Thank you, Rosario. I think it's a great way to finish the interview with this golden nugget. I think being founders-friendly is actually the right way to go and to add more value even to the mothership. Thank you, Rosario.
Yes. Thank you very much, Nicolas. Keep in touch. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.